Hey, how you doing? This is Kurt with Manana No Mas, and welcome to our Thursday live. I've been doing these for the last few weeks, and we've been trying to do things just a little bit different this year. Went live a ton of times, 2022, 2023. Um, let's be honest, all through the pandemic, I was kind of going live almost every day at about 9 o'clock in the morning. But 2025, we decided that we should probably schedule some of these. So instead of these impromptu just jumping on whenever the whim hits, we thought, hey, let's schedule a different thing each Thursday, 10 o'clock Central Time, where we can have kind of a focused talk. Now, last week we talked about tech tools, some different tech tools that I use to run Manana No Mas that helps Manana No Mas become a little bit more successful. And I just wanted to pay it forward and share that with other people. And what was interesting was we covered things that, we're not an affiliate of. We're not getting paychecks or anything like that. We just said, hey, here's a few tools that we're using. And, good luck. If you like them, have at them. So this week we decided this is going to be a lead without being toxic talk. This is one of those talks where it could be over in 30 seconds. You could just say, yeah, don't be a jerk. Right? I could just say, don't be a jerk. And that'd be the end of it. That'd be the end of the talk. But there's more to it than that. And I wanted to be, when I do these talks, I make it a point to be super transparent, to be like, hey, this is real world. This isn't something out of some textbook somewhere, or this is the way you should do it. This is the way we always do it. We're perfect. It's not that. It's we need to realize, we are not AI. We're human, and we're going to have to deal with some human nature. And so, with that in mind, I knew that I would rabbit trail a little bit. So I've got some notes. And you might see me looking down every now and then just to make sure I'm not missing something. Also, this is going to come full circle today. So this conversation, there is stuff at the end. You're going to want to stick around. You're not going to want to get bored and go, oh, he's just rambling on, and leave, because there's some really good information here. So that all said, we do have a couple of things we do here. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, just go ahead and put them in. And I should see the comments come through here on my platform, and then be able to respond to you. And we could have a conversation, whatever. It'd be awesome, right? To interact. So part of these lives is that there is the opportunity for people to join. There's the opportunity for people to join the conversation, have an opinion, and to chat it through. So I encourage you to jump in and participate. Now, a couple of things. I'm old. Let's get that out of the way. I'm old. I'm in my 50s. So I think back, I can't help but think back to, because people ask me now, they go, hey, how did you become, okay. People will ask, how did you become such a good leader? How did you become such a good communicator? How did this time? Young people hate this answer, but it takes time. You need skin in the game. You need to run a few laps. Okay. Like when someone says, well, this ain't my first rodeo. That's because it takes a lot of rodeos to get it down, to be really good, to create that muscle memory. And leading well and communicating well is a type of muscle memory. So it's something that takes time. I can think about one of my first real leadership experiences. Now, I'm not talking about being the captain of the Pee Wee soccer league or any of those things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real leadership as an adult. I got promoted at UPS on the night shift. I was loading trucks. I loved loading trucks. I don't know what it was about that job, but I loved loading trucks, and I was really good at it. And they kept saying, we're going to make you a supervisor and, train other people. So I ended up working extra shifts in the training department. I worked some extra shifts in the offloading department, but I really liked loading the trucks, right? So there's the inbound and the outbound at UPS. And I used to love loading those trucks. It was like a giant game of Tetris. And like I said, I was really good at it. It was like one of those crazy natural fits. I loved it. But they kept saying, you're going to be a supervisor. Supervisors made a lot more money. So I was like, yeah, I'm all in. I want to be a supervisor. It took a long time to make it happen. And this gave me my first real glimpse of the corporate world and numbers and making things fit. Like if you work at a UPS hub that has no supervisors of color and you're a white guy and you're next in line to be a supervisor, you ain't next in line to be a supervisor. So it took a while for me to get the position that they promised me. So I finally got the job, and I was the best in the building at loading the trucks. Okay, there's no shame in that game. I was the best in the building at loading those trucks. I was not I was not the best at running a team of young people. I should say young. I mean, I think the old dude was 30, right? So like the old dude on the shift was, I think, 30 years old. Oh, they did give me a guy in his 40s. They did give me a guy in his 40s once. He didn't make it long. Nobody made it long with me. That's what I'm getting to. Nobody made it long with me because I came from a background where if you were up here and they were down here, degrading people or shaming people into performance wasn't acceptable practice. So someone would say, I'd say, come on, pick it up. We got to go faster. We got to get these trucks out of here. And someone would say, well, look, see you come and do it. I'd jump in the truck and do it. Boom, I did it. Now you do it. Right. And that was not the way to lead, was not the way to grow a team, was not the way to have camaraderie. Now, here's the weird part. Because that was such a testosterone-driven environment, after work, when we were drinking beer in the parking lot, all the supervisors would get together and laugh and joke and drink beer and punch each other in the shoulder. And I felt like I was part of the team. At that point in time, I felt like I was part of the team. I felt like I was one of the boys. I felt like I was putting things together. And there's people that are watching this right now and they're going, that's what I'm talking about, toxic masculinity. And that's not what this talk is about. Okay. I'm telling you a real life story about how I came up through this. Now, as I got older, I got into the automotive industry and I started writing service for different car dealerships and things like that. And I was on the other side of the coin. I was the young person in a seasoned area. James says 40 is the new 30. Well, when I got into the car industry, I was in my 20s. So they called me junior. They called me pup. They called me every derogatory thing you could think of about being a young person. But they were teaching me the car business as this went along. Now, I think that this is kind of important to note. If you're going to lead, you have to perform. If you're going to lead, you have to perform. You can't be a low performance great leader. I just don't believe that happens. All we have to do is look around right now, to go through your X feed, look at the news, and you'll see some great examples of low performing people that think they're great leaders. And we know that those things don't have an alignment. So when I got into the automotive industry, I made it a point to perform very well. And so I, over time, became very good at writing service, very good at sales, very good at overcoming objections, very good at putting estimates together and increasing the value of a repair order. In the repair industry, there's certain goals that people might have. They'll say, well, our goal is to have 2 hours per labor on every RO. That doesn't mean every RO, right? It means average. So we want to see, so if I wrote up 100 repair orders, they'd like to see 200 hours of labor sold. Now, if I sold 200 hours in labor and that generated $20,000, they would also like to see $20,000 in parts sold. So that's kind of how that business goes. It's very much a selling business. But when you're brought into that industry, it's not really projected at you like it's a sales job. Why? Because those dirty salespeople work up front selling cars. I was in the back selling service, right? And we used to think, he's such a used car salesman at the showroom. But in the service department, we were just helping people get their cars fixed, right? No, we were selling parts and labor. And I got really, really good at it. Now, even when I was the best in the dealership, even when I was the best in the region of dealerships, they still called me junior. They still called me pup. They still called me son. And I just put up with it. I didn't realize at the time how negative that was. I didn't realize at the time that that was very poor leadership. I just got through it. I just got through it. Okay. Now, over time, and I want to say this would be probably around when I turned about 35 or so, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Because by this point in time, I had become the service manager. I had become the service director, and I had worked at multiple dealerships. And there were some dealerships where I just told people to work harder, work faster, and make stuff happen. And I would crack that whip, and we would get the numbers, but something weird was happening. My staff was rotating in the background. By rotating in the background, I mean people were leaving. Toolboxes were rolling out, and toolboxes were rolling in. Why was I able to get new technicians? I was able to get new technicians because I was a very high performing manager. So people knew that if they came to work for me, they were going to make a lot of money. What they didn't know was that I was a jerk. And within 3 to 6 months, they would probably start thinking they made a mistake. And within a year, they'd be thinking, I got to get out of here. I didn't realize that was happening. I thought I was a great manager. You see, this is what happens in business a lot. In business a lot, high performers can get into these high performing management positions, and they can actually have pretty decent results. And when that happens, they have a false security in thinking that they're a great leader. They're not leading, they're managing. There's a difference between management and leadership. And if you take any courses on leadership, they'll go through that, right? There's differences between management and leadership. I was really pushing people from a management perspective, and I was driving people hard, and I drove and drove and drove. Now, after I did this at multiple dealerships, I started to realize, hey, maybe there's a better way to talk about this. Maybe there's a better way to do this. And I started looking at some leadership books. I started actually pouring myself into this whole subject. Became very attracted to John Maxwell as an author. And through John Maxwell, got to exposure to like John Wooden and started to read some other properties. Now, this is where the branch in my story goes off in a different direction. Most leaders, most high-performing managers are content. Why? Because they're running something at a high level, they're getting a fair amount of performance, and they might have employee turnover in the background, but those people are just losers. They don't have the stomach for it. If they ain't strong enough, they shouldn't have joined up in the first place. And that's a lot of what these people think. But that's not reality. It's not true. Okay. So when I started to study more of these leadership books, when I started to get into more of what communication really looks like, and what planning looks like, and what vision casting looks like, and building an internal culture where people are on the same team working towards the same goals, I realized that if I did it right, if I took my time and I established the internal culture first, and I did it right, I could still be that high performing leader, and I could get to here pretty quickly, and my team could get to here. It might take a little bit longer, right? I might have to be a little bit more patient to get to that performance that I would have been at anyway. Okay. It might have taken a little longer. But what happened next was, because I had the leadership and the internal culture and the buy-in and the vision casting, and everybody's pushing towards the same goals, we were able to creak that forward. And in business, when you can creak something forward 5, 10, 15% ahead of what it ever would have been before, your returns are huge. And that's what I started to experience in the automotive industry. And then I went to the power sports industry. And then I wrote a book on service writing. And then that book on service writing got bought by people at Ducati. Then I became the internal training manager for Ducati North America. And I was in charge of all the training from Canada to Mexico. And then I left there and went to Suzuki. And I was in charge of publications and training for Suzuki with automotive, motorcycle, and marine. And this whole thing just kept going. So a lot of this came from the type of communication. And this is where I might sound I always call it crystals and pyramid, right? I might sound like crystals and pyramids. That's not the point. The point is, we all want something. We all want something. So, what are the tools or what are the pathways to get to those things that we want? If you want to be a leader, then you have to lead your people. So, you still need to be a person of high performance. You still need to be a person that can get the job done. You still need to have enough knowledge about what's going on to be able to perform well in the environment. So, you don't lose any of the responsibilities about being a high performing person. Okay. But now you also need to grow in the way that you communicate to people. You want to cast a vision to people. You want to be like, this is where we are. This is where we're going. These are the next 3 steps on how we're going to get there. And you want to make sure that people understand you have a strategy, you have a plan. When we interview employees at different businesses, and this is some of what I do with my business consulting work, we have a process where we give employees an anonymous survey. Most of the time, the ownership or the management of the company is like, man, I don't know what we're going to get back on the survey. That's a dead giveaway. They don't communicate well. The other one is, pretty sure everybody's happy here. The survey is going to come back blank. They're not a leader, right? People always want something. There's always some room for improvement somewhere. They always want something. If you give someone an anonymous channel to communicate with you through a survey, you're going to get some stuff that you don't expect. The ones that I know are going to be the good leaders are the ones that are like, I'm looking forward to seeing what the staff has to say so we can move forward. And those work out really well. But let me give you some insight. No matter how much you think you are communicating to your staff, chances are they want more communication. Sounds crazy because we think we're bugging the crud out of them all the time, but they want more communication. They want to know, I have it down here somewhere. They want to know what's expected, right? They want to know what's expected, what the plan is, and they want that feedback that comes back. They want better training. A lot of times when we get these surveys back, they'll say, I wasn't really trained. I was given an orientation on a software program. I was showed where my work area was. I was shown where the special tools were, but they weren't shown how to use the computer, how to fix a situation when something goes wrong. They weren't told how to anticipate when things don't go right. They were showed the special tools, but they weren't taught how to use the special tools. The training is usually lacking. And so, surprise, surprise, I'm addicted to making e-learning for other companies. Why? Because I think it's a necessity, right? So whenever I'm talking to a client, if they don't already have some online training for their staff, it's one of the first questions I bring up. Hey, how do you train your staff? How do you give them additional training? What if we created a static training source that allowed them to use a resource to get better trained on what you expect them to do in the job? That usually becomes part of our web projects when we do the business consulting. The other thing is the better feedback. Sitting them down once a year to maybe give them a 1 or 2% raise and a pat on the back is not what they're looking for. In fact, they might not even be looking for the raise. They want feedback, and they want constant feedback. How was this week? How was productivity this week compared to this week last year? How was productivity this month? Our sales are up, our sales are down. What's our percentages of margin? Our margins have gone up. The employees want that kind of feedback. And for some reason, ownership and management is hesitant to share that kind of information with people, but they want it. They want that kind of information. On a personal note, I'll tell you, I worked at a place called Don Chalmers Ford in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And once a month, they would have an all hands meeting, and they did it twice. One in the morning, one in the afternoon, because they had a huge staff. And so they would do half the staff in the morning, the other half in the afternoon. And when I first started going to these meetings, I thought, these people are crazy. I can't believe they share all this information. They shared how much money was made for every car sold, how much money the finance and insurance department made for every car sold, what the current inventory levels were, what cars were in stock, what cars weren't in stock. I wasn't even in the sales department. Why was I in this meeting? That was kind of crazy, right? And then they would go into service and they would say, the main service department worked on this many cars, this many hours per RO, this much money per repair order, this percentage in warranty work, this percentage in customer pay. And ready for this? This is how much revenue they made. This is how much profit they made. This is how much went to the owner of the company. And this is how much got recycled back and reinvested into the business. What? Then they got to my service department. I ran a satellite service department there, and they would do the same thing. When I first took over that department, it made $56,000 a month in gross profit. And when I left that department, it was on track for $96,000 a month in gross profit. Folks, that kind of feedback was incredible because here's what happened. We would actually start to root for each other, right? Like when people knew that I was trying to get to that $90,000 for a month of gross profit, we'd track our numbers. We know we're getting close. The main service department would actually send me work sometimes. They'd be like, hey, we got a car over here. We can't get it in until next Thursday, but the customer want to know if we could get it in earlier. Is this something you guys can do? And they would send us the work. And then we would get the credit for the work and it would help our gross profit for the month. And we work together as a team. That's what I'm talking about with the internal culture, communication. If that's right, we can start to perform at a higher level. So when I train power sports dealerships and marine dealerships on how to do things, I'm generally saying, let's fix your communication and your internal culture issues first. Let's set a baseline of communication and grow some teamwork here. Then we can implement some processes. Processes won't be adopted unless everybody's on the same page. So let's get everybody on the same page. Now let's inject some processes. And now with those processes, we can measure the growth. And when we measure the growth, we're able to give people the feedback. And James jumps in again with feedback, 100%. Feedback for 100. Absolutely, man. So this takes me full circle. I promised you guys I would come full circle on this. I've learned a couple of times that sometimes it doesn't work. So, and we don't have the time right now for me to go into everything. Like I've read 20 John Maxwell books, right? So if we were to take some of that, talk to people gently, use nice words, do this, be pleasant. And then, I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg in his interview with Joe Rogan last week said that he felt that there was an emasculation in the United States, right? Like we have taken so much testosterone out of our environment that now no one has a firm base to stand on, right? Basically is what he was saying. Some of that's true, especially in the corporate world. So sometimes as a person, as a human being, remember we're still humans, you still want some of that. You still want some of the, I like going mountain biking with my friends and calling the slow guy easy meat. Why do you call him easy meat? Because that's the one the mountain lion can catch, right? There's nicknames. Get together with any kind of blue collar team of people and everybody's got a nickname and it's fun. And people go, oh, that's toxic. It's fun, right? Not everything that is fun is toxic. Sometimes it gets mean, but hey, sometimes it gets mean. Sometimes we miss that interaction. And so when we miss that interaction, that's when we should extricate ourselves from our professional environment and maybe go mountain biking, maybe go hunting, maybe get into, some kind of group or activity where there's a little more competition or physical nature, MMA, jiu-jitsu, any of those things. Now, what's unique about jiu-jitsu is, any of those martial arts, there's a lot of discipline, right? But there's also a lot of that masculinity there. So there are a lot of places in society where it's still completely acceptable to be masculine and express yourself. So now I want to switch gears. Let's say you've studied all of the books, you've grown in your ability to lead, and you get to a place in corporate where you're actually pretty well regarded as being a really good leader. To put things into perspective, when I left Suzuki, employees of mine wrote recommendations on my LinkedIn page. I don't know how many bosses out there get recommendations on a third-party site voluntarily from employees, but that's what happened for me. right? So in my little mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm a pretty good leader. I'm a pretty good communicator. I won people over. And while I won those people over, we also produced more work for Suzuki at that time than the training department ever had. So we performed at a very high level and had that really good communication and feedback loop going, right? If I didn't have a really good communication and feedback loop going, I wouldn't be getting recommendations on my LinkedIn. But during that same time, there was one employee just couldn't stand me, and there's a lot of background as to why. Couldn't stand me. And everywhere we went, it was a problem. We'd have to travel together. We went to Japan together, and everywhere we went it seemed to be a problem. And I tried every bit of all of this leadership training that I had read about. I had tried, let's do an improvement plan. Let's try this. Let's get HR involved. Let's do this. Let's try that. And I tried all these nice things. I tried something probably would have gotten me fired if anyone would have known about it. Pulled him in an office, said, turn off your phone. I'm going to turn off my phone. We're going to have a talk. We're going to talk like real people. And we had a very real talk. I said, I don't know what I did to you. I have no idea what I did to you. But I'm willing to say I did something. I just have no idea what it is. And we had a very brass tacks, direct conversation. I'm going to say it was every bit of toxic masculinity put right on that table in that moment, in a quiet room. And you know what came out? The truth. And you know what came out? The truth was a huge misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding was able to get put under the carpet, put away. And I said, well, from this moment forward, can we try this again? And we tried it again. So I didn't try to get him fired behind his back or anything like that. He misunderstood a situation. I was able to correct that misunderstanding. We put it under the carpet. And you know what happened? He turned into one of the most productive employees I had ever had in my life. This kid was extremely gifted. I call him a kid. He was grown. He was in his 30s. He could take apart motors. He could write training material. He could build animations. He was really great with drones and electronics, all of those things. And what I'm getting at here is even when you try all of the techniques that all of the professionals say are the way to go, sometimes you got to check your heart and you got to go, okay, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take a chance here and I'm just going to be real. And that to me is when being a real leader really shines. If you don't take the time to be real when you're communicating with your staff, with your people, even if the real you is not the prettiest part of you, like me in that quiet room, turn our cell phones off, we're just going to have a conversation. That real me is not the prettiest me, but it is the most direct, honest me. And when I gave that to my employee, it was a gift. I took a risk, they took a risk, and in the end, the risk won, and we ended up having an amazing year. We had some of the most productive, best content ever made that year. But if we're going to be real, that result came from breaking some of the rules. The things that were said in that conversation, if said in front of HR, would have had both of us fired. And sometimes we have to get outside of the rules a little bit so that we can really make really great headway. But know that every time you make really great headway, there's a little bit of risk, right? There's what do they call that? Risk reward, right? The risk reward. So if I'm looking at my notes here, sometimes I miss the old ways. I find other outlets to express myself. So mountain biking, hunting, fishing, the gym, whatever works for you, and reading. Here's the deal. I talked about when I started UPS, the car business, and how I started to evolve working in the car business and where I'm at now. It came from reading. Man, somebody really wants to talk to me. My phone is bunging away over here. Came from reading, being involved in other masterminds, networking with other people, right? And courses. I've taken a fair amount of courses on training. In fact, in the end, I became John Maxwell certified in 2016. I flew to Orlando and I stayed there for a week, and I met with John Maxwell and 3,000 of his best friends and became John Maxwell Leadership Team certified. And to me, even though I don't actively really sell myself as a John Maxwell speaker and trainer, I do use those skills. I do employ those skills often. I would say to infinity. That type of investment, that type of training. See, some people will go to college and spend $100,000 going to college, $200,000 going to college, making that kind of investment. And for me, that was my level of investment. I said, I really want to pursue this leadership thing. I really want to understand it. I want to know how people tick. I want to know how to communicate with people, give them feedback, receive feedback without getting angry about it, and make effective changes. I want to know how to grow a company from the inside with great culture. And so if we have communication and culture on the inside, and then we sprinkle on some processes, those processes will be adopted, and then we can measure the results. And I'm telling you, so many companies have a high-performing manager that can drill and force a little bit of performance out of a team. But if that team is always turning, if there's always a high turnover rate, it's never going to get past this level. But if you can build culture and communication, and you have a high performing manager that is now a performing managing leader, and they can get people up to here pretty steady, and that turnover reduces, oh my goodness, they can push right past, can't they? And that is, to me, how we really take advantage of some low-hanging fruit and find some growth in some of these companies. When I'm doing training for the Power Sport Academy and I'm dealing with dealerships, I am dealing with many people who are experts in their field, absolutely brilliant people at the work that they do, but they've never had a professional communications course. They don't know how to supervise people. They don't know how to talk to customers. You know what? Let's be honest. Most of them don't know how to answer the phone. We have a course at the Power Sport Academy on how to use the phone as an effective sales tool. Why do I have a course for how to use the phone as an effective sales tool? Go visit a car or a motorcycle dealership. Just stand in the service department and listen to them answer the phone. That's why I have a course on how to use the phone as an effective sales tool. You see, the more that we depend on AI and the more that we depend on processes and automations and the more that we depend on some of these things that we see every day in life, the more we depend on those things, the less skilled we are at maintaining that culture and communication. And so if we're not careful, it's going to get worse. During the pandemic, we saw things get a lot worse. You couldn't get a cheeseburger without losing your mind during the pandemic, right? The customer service was gone. And it's starting to come back a little bit. But it's really going to come from people that embrace the idea of leadership and being able to lead without being toxic. And so we can't just beat on people for results. What we have to do is formulate a strategy, cast a vision of where we are, where we want to go, the different steps to get there, and let everybody on the team know what their role is in those steps. And if we can do that, and we can do that effectively, we get the performance out of people. We get the efficiency. We get the productivity without having to beat on people. So we get the results through the hard work of communication and feedback rather than through the reflex action of yelling and screaming at people. Oh, we could do this for days and days and days, but I think today I'm going to wrap this one up. And as we do these lives, I'm really curious to know. I mean, I mentioned reading books, masterminds, courses. We've got some courses at Mañana No Mas. If you go to mañananomas.com, you'll see, we've got courses there. But from a mastermind perspective, I'm curious after this talk, if people watch this on the replay or not, if you're interested in some type of a small, Zoom call, face-to-face, group of 6, 10 people, different size companies, maybe having real conversations about leading and obstacles in leading and communication, might be something we could put together if there's enough demand for it. So if you have any feedback or comments about this video, or you're watching the replay, I'd love to see them. James, thank you so much for your support and for coming. And everybody, have yourselves a, let's see, let me get ready to hit that. Have a wonderful day.